We've talked long before this about how important trade really is to countries. I mean, that's something that should be quite obvious. And especially to the UK, we've talked about how trade gravity is important. Look, a country isn't going to go and do even more trade with a country halfway around the world because logistically, it still takes time for you to transport stuff. It still takes time for it to get from the factory where it's coming from, let's say the US, over to actually land in the UK and then to be distributed into the shops for people to buy in the UK. That still takes a lot of time, and people don't appreciate that that time costs money. Thus, these prices do go up. And as we've talked about before, because of that, you have to then sell an increased volume. And of course, this means that countries put tariffs on to stop, well, products just flooding the market. And by the looks of it, this is the intended outcome of what is probably going to be the US trade deal we're going to end up signing with absolutely no input because, we can't have the plebs look at the what's actually going into the details of this trade agreement. Now, that is going to be a disaster, not only for British farming, manufacturing, it's going to be an absolute disaster because they're not going to be able to compete with the amount of cheap goods coming into this country. And that's just going to be the truth. A no-deal Brexit is going to scar our economy for years. And it's been so funny to watch the Brexiteers who for years have been saying that a no-deal Brexit is going to be fine and it's not going to cause any damage, only for them to now turn around and say this pandemic presents an amazing opportunity because we can go for a no-deal Brexit and it'll disguise the damage. And they are openly saying that. Of course, what they're hoping is that it's only going to be a short-term blip. However, once again, if you followed Brexit on this channel or just Brexit in general for any length of time, you know that all these economic experts have all said that this is going to permanently affect the UK's economy. So, today, we turn to Bloomberg. The title of it is basically this: No deal Brexit would scar UK economy long past pandemic. The beleaguered UK economy currently experiencing what could be its deepest recession in three centuries, and it may need to brace for another long-term shock after the pandemic. A report this week from the UK in a Changing Europe, a research group, shows that leaving the European Union on World Trade Organization terms could lead to an 8.1% reduction in gross domestic product over a decade as a result of trade barriers and ripple effects like lower productivity. This is nothing new. We've gone over these multiple reports time and time again, and all the effort has basically been we are going to lose 8% of our GDP, and it's going to be absolute nightmare. That is like, it may sound like a small number, 8%, but you're talking trillions of pounds, if not even more than that. Probably more than that. I'm probably estimating it at a lower number. It's probably even more than that. But that's insane. And remember, we back when we covered these about what the economic forecasters were saying about how much damage this will be, and they were even saying that, look, even if we went for the softest form of Brexit, we'd be losing about 2% of our GDP, and trying to put policies and like stimuli to try and help restore that or even cover for that is going to be incredibly hard. And that was just 2%. We've now got to try and cover at least 8%. And of course, as is usual, all these Brexiteers have all been saying, oh, it's fine, we'll do trade deals with all the rest of the world, blah, 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 blah. No, it doesn't work like that. You need to do countries all trade with their closest neighbours first before anywhere else, pretty much. And it doesn't matter whether we do a trade deal with the US or China, all estimates have basically said those trade deals are not going to replace what we lose from leaving the European Union and the single market. Once again, all these things that we said were going to happen, still said they're going to happen, and they're coming more and more true. You know, I often said one of these days I will just sit here with a glass and I'll just read an article and I'll just go, told you so. That will be my video, the pièce de résistance. Oh, anyway, it continues. So Britain has until the 31st of December to agree a deal with the bloc, and little progress is being made ahead of formal talks restarting next week. The WTO option would significantly disrupt trade between the UK and the EU, and even some UK trade with other parts of the world, the researchers wrote. This decline is dwarfed by the economic impact of the pandemic, but whereas it is hoped that the impact of COVID-19 will be relatively short-lived, the impact of Brexit will not. And this isn't new. This is what has been all the experts have been saying long before Brexit. So the group said that under the floor set by the WTO, UK goods and exports into the EU and services aren't subject to tariffs and would be charged duties at an average rate of 3.2%. The average tariffs that the UK farm goods face are much higher, at 8.7%, it said. While both sides insist securing a free trade agreement is still their favoured outcome, our side certainly isn't. Because, as we've said before, a WTO exit is exactly what they've wanted. So why not just smuggle one under the floor? While all this mess is going on, they can just go, oh, we didn't get a deal. It's not our fault. It's the EU's fault. You could have extended the transition, you know. Oh, they're idiots. They really are. It's shocking that this is an ideological project that is being pushed by the hard right wing of the Tories, and we should be incredibly aware of what they plan to do afterwards, because as I've said before, it's not just Brexit and the impact and the fallout we've got to worry about, it's what these hard right wing Tories want to do to the UK once they achieve it. And that's the even more worrying thing that we should have to worry about. The agreement is still their favourite outcome. The prospect of a no deal again is becoming a real risk to businesses who could face steep tariffs and quotas on top of the pandemic disruptions they're already facing. Even with a free trade agreement, goods traded between the UK and the EU will face unavoidable new entry barriers and friction at the border. This will increase time even more. And it will increase cost to businesses as well. Because if you've never seen trade, like one of these trade documents before, they're about that thick. And that might just be for one item. So imagine you've got an entire shipment of documents just that thick. Imagine how much time a company now has to put into signing all that and making sure that they're all dot the I, cross the T's. Because let's say a signature isn't in place, you can't cross the border. That entire shipment gets delayed. And thus, all our current manufacturing process of the just-in-time delivery systems goes to pot. There will also be a myriad of new complications in services which account for 45% of UK exports. earlier this month, the Bank of England officials produced a scenario showing that the economy could shrink by 14% this year, which would be the biggest contraction since 1706. Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey said that on Wednesday that Britain faces a protracted recovery from this crisis with a longer and more difficult recovery than previous recessions because we are not in the EU. And Brexiteers, I'm going to love this now because I can already see the picture of what's going to happen. Europe is going to get onto a faster track of recovery a lot faster than we were, and we're not. We're going to be stuck behind massively. So I'm going to have to enjoy, I'm going to enjoy profusely and very perversely sometimes how Brexiteers are going to have to, talk themselves around of how the UK, even though it's left the shackles of the European Union, and apparently we were just the secret power that was just shackled by them. How come it isn't performing as well when we've been shackled? And of course, our answer is, it's the coronavirus. No. It's not Brexit. They're not going to be able to do that forever. Sooner or later, there will be a report that comes out and say, yeah, it's Brexit that's done this. And then they can't explain it, and then like that. Brexit was always an illusion, and it's always been, whenever it has met reality, it has just crashed into the wall of reality and been unable to do anything about it. Once again, we are at that point, and as usual, the Brexiteers, be they Brexit supporters or like the pushers of Brexit, aren't going to be very happy with it, and you can't blame the EU anymore. So leaving the EU without a deal could make it even slower. Meanwhile, the UK is also trying to forge a free trade agreement with the US this year. Gary Hobhofer, I think that's how you say it, of the Pearson Institute for International Economics in Washington, sees the prospects of a transatlantic deal as daunting, saying that London's red lines on agriculture and digital trade and its environmental aspirations foretell a rough road ahead. So, yeah, and a deal with the US ain't going to happen. They're the bigger market. They've got a much more bigger hand to trade, and yeah, we ain't going to get a good deal out of that. We're going to get absolutely screwed. And once again, if Brexit, and this is the thing, I agree with Caroline Lucas. She put there was a bill that went forward that said that all trade deals must be scrutinised by Parliament, and the Brexiteers voted it down. So we know there's one currently in progress because the US have said so, but they didn't say who it was, and we've said that we're in talks, but we're not going to say who it is. It's obviously talks are already happening. Ain't going to happen, and if it is, it's not going to be good for us. It's not going to be good for our agriculture, factories, manufacturing. And once again, I'm just going to sit here and just go, what was the point of Brexit? What was the point of all this? Nothing. It's all the ideas for Brexit were, as they always were, just illusions that can't be backed up by any form of reality. There you go.